Hey everyone, welcome to Garage Talk. As always, I'm Conrad. Let's go.
I'm Ted. It's time to rock and roll. Part two
in full effect in the garage. Today we have back with us Dallas Street, Kale Grindle. Welcome, fellas. I gotta add in the applause, man. They really appreciate your hard work, guys.
It's great to be back.
Since we last spoke, what's been happening?
A lot of exciting stuff. Where do we want to begin?
Let's begin with what you had messaged me about. The
bills, House bills.
The House bills.
Yep. Okay, and this kind of for everyone listening, we'll stress the importance of an election. The commissioners decided they were going to use $15,000 of taxpayer money to hire a lobbyist. Mm-hmm. They didn't get any input from citizens. I don't know how this traditionally works, but $15,000 is quite a bit of money. This lobbyist went down to Indianapolis and lobbied to get Grant County put onto a House bill that would allow the county to increase the local income tax from a 0.02% to a 0.05% maximum. I've been told by people within the county that a 0.05% income tax would make us the highest in the state. But it would increase the revenue that the county brings in. That lobbyist also lobbied to get us put on a House bill that removes the power of this income tax and how to use it from the county council and gives it to what they call a county tax council, which is a couple members of the county council and a couple members of the councils from each of the cities. They come together, they meet and talk about how the money should be used. So they undercut the county council in this whole process. Mm-hmm. We've kind of put together, Steve Wright will tell you we need $110 million for a new jail. At a 0.02% income tax, you're looking at $54 million over a series of years. Okay. So in talks, let's say we take it up to 0.04%, you're now at $108 million just in income taxes alone. So you're looking at Steve Wright's jail, you come up with a couple more $1 million. So in our minds, that eliminates the need for solar, right? Mm-hmm.
I think that came out to 115 or 110, so they would still have a little bit money left over.
Right. So Steve Wright tells us, if you listen to Steve Wright talk about solar, we need money for a new jail. That's what it always circles back to. The whole solar conversation with Steve. Why do we need solar if you're increasing our income taxes? Mm-hmm. And why did you lobby to have that taken out of the county council's hands and put into the county tax council's hands? Steve Wright also openly talks about how close he is with Mayor Rock. Mm-hmm. Steve Wright did a campaign dinner in Gas City. Mayor Rock supported it. So in my mind, I'm starting to wonder, are you trying to use your connections a little bit more with this income tax mm-hmm. increase? So we're kind of left to question, you know.
Okay. The way I understand it, this proposal for the new jail almost looks identical to the current jail.
I haven't seen have you seen the
I haven't seen the actual proposal. I think in one of the commissioner meetings, I think maybe with Sheriff Garcia, mm-hmm. I think it's roughly 500 person. Okay. I think the current jail's 82, something like that. Oh, so it's significantly bigger.
Okay.
Where's it going to go?
Garthwaite?
I don't even know.
The talk has been Garthwaite.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if some of that money would be better spent with rehabilitation and different other programs, preventative programs. And
so I have some numbers for that, actually.
What a coincidence. But yeah, so let's prevent the crime, right?
Yeah. So just let's run some numbers real quick. $110 million projected cost, right?
Okay.
I haven't verified this, but this is the number Steve Wright throws around. There's 66,000 people in the county. Let's just make it a nice round number. That comes out to $1,666 per man, woman, and child. That's not taxpayer, that's every citizen. As far as who is in our current jail, 45% of them are for mental related issues. 45% of them are for drug related issues. 10% of that is criminal. And these are actual numbers. I guess it's called the state of the judiciary that the judge presents to the council. So these are figures from the actual judge himself, herself, whoever it is.
Okay. All right.
So the vast majority of people taking up our jail now are maybe they're criminal, maybe they've done some crime, but it's not for pure criminal purposes. You know, they may have mental issues and they may have been caught up in drugs or something. The vast 90% of it is something that could be treated outside of a jail.
Mm-hmm.
I know they just closed a mental facility in Marion. And I think a lot of the homeless issues, those stem from mental illness, and a lot of the crimes are probably related to that as well. It just makes me wonder if they're going to raise your taxes and pay for the jail, where does the money go for solar?
Exactly.
I wish somebody would tell us.
Where does the energy go? I mean,
Well, we know where the energy goes.
Yeah,
Anywhere but here.
not to us.
Right.
Okay.
So when we're talking about money, I think our current sitting commissioners are living in a fairy tale world where they actually believe that these companies are going to follow through with the promises they've made. They're coming in here and they're going to file for a tax abatement, and they're going to promise the commissioners, well, once you give us this abatement, we're going to give you X amount of dollars in community funding. Okay, great. But what happens when you sell the contract? And then they sell the contract.
How is that legal? How can they make a deal and then sell?
I believe they are only there to get the contract approved through the county. Roland Rosario of GNEX is on record as stating you don't want GNEX putting solar panels in the ground. That's why we hire other companies. But he also, in the same breath, says that they sell the contracts. That was his explanation.
So they
they were-
subcontract?
I think they were just stewards just to get the ball rolling.
Facilitators, if you
Yep,
will.
and that's
And what happens to the solar panels once they've been put in the ground?
That too comes-
Who's in charge of making sure those are all up in working order?
Whoever owns that contract at the time.
And it has,
And the ordinance is supposed to protect the landowner from that.
okay.
Because once you sell a contract so much and it gets so diluted, accountability and ownership is kind of hard to come by, especially for a county that can barely afford to hold people accountable for their houses and their yards.
yeah.
Now you're bringing in massive scale solar projects and wanting to hold people accountable. So
That sounds like a huge headache when it's on your land and something's going on and you're looking for somebody to come make that right. And
Right.
it sounds like a lot of buck passing to me.
Yep. And I don't think there's a single commissioner on the board that's going to walk out to your property and help you clean that up. They're going to look at you and say, you signed the lease, it's your problem.
It's kind of like, I mean, like you said, they're just going to sell these contracts. You know, how many times has your mortgage been sold on your home to another company?
Happens to student loans too.
Right.
But so Teddy, like if that happened on your property and there's a huge hailstorm and you know, they're the size of golf balls and now those solar panels are damaged, are they just going to sit there? Who fixes those?
That was my question. You know, who's going to do preventive maintenance? Who's going to do maintenance on them?
It's supposed to be the company that holds the contract.
Okay,
Am I
but-
right?
Yeah, I would have to imagine if you're there to make money and sell the electricity to whatever service provider is in the area, you know, it's in your best interest to keep your stuff up to date. But once the contract's over, they could just as easily shut down instantly, and there's nobody
Yeah,
held accountable.
And you're
not
stuck.
What happens?
take that stuff down.
You know, there's a bond. There's supposed to be a bond to cover demolition and reconcile everything, put the ground back, or to renew the lease. But we know somebody in the Van Buren area who had a landfill. The bond disappeared, and now the landowners are left with a landfill that they can't afford to reclaim.
Right.
So it's just left in squalor right now.
That's
And,
what I mean.
and you better believe something that costs hundreds of millions of dollars to remove, that'll happen with way more occurrence than just some little landfill.
Oh, yeah. And that's what I
And
mean.
you know, excuse me, on the topic of a storm, if a hailstorm comes in, how long is it going to take them to, one, identify that there's a problem, and then two, correct it?
Yeah.
So you've got that entire time where you've got who knows what chemicals seeping off of a panel into the ground
Yep.
and causing unknown damage, because this hasn't been around long enough for studies to really be complete and give us an overall picture of what damages are actually caused.
That's a good point. Yeah.
We'll find out real soon because of that massive hailstorm that completely demolished an installation down in Texas.
Really? I didn't hear about that one.
Yeah, that was just 2-3 weeks ago or something like
It
that.
was very, very large.
I mean, it was a complete destruction from hail. And, we'll see what kind of response is out of that. And, there's going to be long-term effects that won't be known for decades to come.
Oh, yeah. And that's what I was wondering, because like you guys said, these companies, they're out of state, so something's damaged, it's their,
I mean, I deal with what I do in engineering, I deal with contractors all the time. If we got something going on, it may take us just a couple days to get a contractor out there.
yeah.
And we're monitoring right there on the spot. Somebody from North Carolina or wherever they sell this contract, they won't know until they see that report from the day before said, oh, hey, our energy output's 0 on this particular section. Send somebody out to inspect. They'll send a couple days, somebody to inspect, somebody to write up the report, couple days, maybe weeks for technicians to get out there to assess the actual damage,
right.
and then to hire contractors to come out and bid on everything, not to mention the lead time in ordering new material, and then the construction to do it. You're probably talking months at the earliest.
Most likely, yeah.
How many farms in the community could be affected by this?
It's hard for me to say.
Okay.
I say that because we know of a handful of leases that are currently out there.
Okay.
But I truly believe if this goes through and if they start seeing these get put in, other farmers might hop on board.
Right, yep.
I don't know that I've seen an actual number, but the ones we know of, I think there's roughly 30-ish separate entities that have signed up for this.
Now, is this all around the county, north, south, east, and west, or are they focusing on a certain location
like I
right
said,
now?
like I said, the last one, it's kind of following the high voltage wire. So southeastern Grant County in the Matthews area, the Lassiters and the Stevens.
Yep.
They've got a big installation, and then the one up by Van Buren is a large one, and I know they've got some.
There's some coming together.
Yeah, there's some coming right here to the interstate. Right on the interstate and State Road 22. There's some coming in there, and there's a few going in around the Sweetser area.
Yes.
Because
That's just what we know of. I know there's more out there that we can't get a hold of.
Because I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was at a local watering hole, and there were some guys here in town, and they're the ones doing the concrete they're doing the concrete pads for the towers. These guys are. And they said they're going to be here for at least 4 months. And they just do the contract. They're the concrete.
Yeah, I don't see us. We're in moratorium until August. So
Yeah.
I believe there's not allowed to be any movement on solar while we're in moratorium.
Are we going to see farms with cows grazing
If you listen to the solar companies, they'll tell you that you can have animals in the field.
Yeah, you
I've
can
heard
farm
about-
in between the panels on, you
But
know,
make that
sheep,
make sense.
because Indiana is known for its sheep population,
Right,
right?
yeah.
I've seen like documentaries where they were talking about the heat generated off these solar cells.
Turns into a storm magnet. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, there's science that shows that.
Yeah.
You beat the sun down on a dark colored panel that's supposed to absorb the sunlight, and it just radiates heat upwards, and it turns into a magnet for severe weather, which would probably be the reason why Texas had a hailstorm on a massive industrial solar project.
Yeah, this information come from an actual NASA, and a real rocket scientist.
Yes. And that was also brought up at the public forum here a couple weeks ago to the commissioners, and there's still no movement. I mean, we're silence, radio silence out of the commissioner's office.
Yeah, they were supposed to use this 6-month moratorium in order to educate themselves, make necessary changes. And last week, Monday, was it this Monday? The last commissioner meeting,
Oh, yeah.
I went to the meeting and asked, where we are at, because I think everybody was under the assumption that the commissioners meeting was an informational meeting where the commissioners would tell us the state of the county and where we're at with solar. But when I asked that question, Ron Stewart, nice guy, but I think he's been playing the game too long. I got we were there for an hour and a half and nobody asked us any questions. Come on. But anyways, I lost my train of thought there.
No, so going back to what you just said, I know that if no one's there to make a public comment or ask questions, it's one of those things where they're not, if you don't ask, they're not going to tell you.
There you go. That just reminded me. So at the commissioner meeting this week, last week, whatever it was, I think it was whenever it was, I asked again, regardless of what happened at the solar meeting, can you tell us taxpayers where the commissioners sit right now? And again, we got a non-answer. We've got a couple more months to address this. I think, Mark Bardsley actually finally said something along the lines of we'll talk about it before the moratorium ends, but how are they going to talk? Because we've already got information saying their attorneys have warned them not to discuss anything through emails. So are they only going to discuss it during the commissioners' meetings, which are usually full agenda? Mm-hmm. Or are they conferring outside of their meetings, which is not legal because they have to have a quorum?
So they won't even tell you what they've learned up to this point.
My guess is they already made their made up. This moratorium is to placate us and get them past the elections so they can, take the heat off of them.
Right.
So they're trying to make solar not the election issue.
So this
They're playing games.
this is where the election comes in and where it becomes incredibly important that anyone listening or anyone who is familiar with the situation understands there's an alternative. And without even really throwing names out, I believe that the government agencies responsible for making decisions on our behalf should at least communicate with us, regardless of how they feel about us as constituents or our thoughts or opinions. If you are elected into an office, regardless of what level that is, you owe us an explanation of where we're at, what your thought processes are, and an explanation to why our voices aren't being heard yet, outside of the 66,000 people that we have to represent and the $110 million jail. We are asking our elected officials to make it make sense to us as rural citizens. So in an election year, what Kale was just talking about becomes incredibly important.
Yep.
And I think that's kind of what this is all circled back to.
I wonder how much of that is legal advice of what they can share and what they can't.
We have record of the county attorney emailing and saying, don't talk about this in emails because they're watching. Be careful what you say because they're watching. We have it in public record. I mean, anyone who wants the link, I'll send it to them. County attorney said that back in 2022.
Kyle Persinger.
And so they've kind of been mum's the word, but you would think, as elected officials, they would tell their constituents, here's the why, here's what's in it. And if the constituents show up and voice their concerns, we might reconsider, but that's not the case for Mark Bardsley and Steve Wright.
Wow.
Which leads us to believe that either A, they've made up their mind or are conferring in secret. So what's the secret? Why is this being so quiet? Why aren't they telling us what's going on? I mean, if it was for our best interest, you would think, look at me, I'm doing great for the county. Here's what we are doing for you. Mm-hmm. If it was that case, people like Steve, who wants to be Mr. Look at me and how great I am working for the citizens. So this is how I'm helping you. This is why solar is going to, bring tons of money. Here's the dollar figures that it's going to bring. Here's how it's going to help us. Here's how we're going to protect the citizens and the people who didn't sign up for it, but who are still going to be affected by it. We're not getting any of that.
See, and in my mind, if it's that good, if everyone's going to benefit that much, I'd be screaming it from the rooftops to anyone that would listen.
See, that's what's going through my head right now. It's like when these guys first ran for election, what were they telling people?
Well, Steve Wright didn't run. He was caucused
Right,
in.
he was caucused in,
He was also a member of the Seabold administration city council and left that position and was caucused in conveniently after doing a $40,000 deal with Mark Bardsley. I think now Steve's finally getting a taste of what an election looks like.
Well, and like you guys said, I would want people to know, I'm going to show you the positives. Not hiding stuff.
For over 3 years.
If I had a big ego, which obviously I don't, but if I was doing that good for the county, I'd want everybody to know because that's just going to help me in the next election.
Exactly. Right.
Put a little fuel in that tank and burn it when you need it.
Yep.
Hey, remember when I did that awesome thing a couple of years ago? Vote for me again.
Now, there are two candidates out there, I will tell you, that are very open with their thoughts and opinions and will talk to you about it. And they are willing to give their phone number out and meet with anyone to talk with them about whatever local issues that these people want to talk about. They're both running for commissioner. And I think that speaks volumes to their character and what they're willing to do for their community. They're not members of the Good Old Boys Club, and anyone listening in Grant County is surely smart enough to acknowledge there's a Good Old Boys Club around here. And I think it's time for a change.
And it's not just election talk, but they really are working for the citizens. Like they are transparent. Shane as president, the county council, he makes an effort to let everybody speak. The commissioners during their meetings, they're not legally obligated to allow public comment, but when they do, it's at the end of the meetings when the meeting has already, been in recess or
right.
It's not adjourned, but in recess. At the county council, Shane, if they come up with some big, thing to vote on, they'll stop the meeting and ask for public input right then and there. Like, yeah, you're representing the citizens. You should be getting their opinions on things. That's good government right there.
Yeah, definitely.
Is some of that policy, or is some of that possibly policy handed down from the state about public comment?
For the commissioners, yes, that is
Okay.
that is state policy. However, if one wanted to have a good government and good standing with the citizens, you would think it'd welcome public comment at any period, especially with jail, solar, crime, that kind of stuff. You want people's input because it's their money that you're spending.
Right.
So now, moving on from that, the other House bill that you mentioned.
1120
Yeah.
takes the power from the county council to
Taxing power.
Yes, to decide how these taxes will be used and gives it to the county tax council, which then pulls in representatives from the city or the cities, Gas City, Jonesboro, Marion, and makes it a larger panel. But here's the kicker. We met with a state representative. I'm not going to use their name. We developed a pretty good relationship with this person to the point where I could probably call them right now and they'd pick up the phone. Wonderful relationship for me to have personally, but also a wonderful resource when navigating these waters. So I asked that person, is there a possibility or what chance do we have of getting out of House Bill 1120, which takes the power from the county council, but staying in House Bill 1121? And they told me absolutely none. It's a done deal. So again, with zero input from the citizens and $15,000 of taxpayer money, you undercut the county council and increased our income tax.
And the commissioners use $15,000 out of their own commissioners fund, because if they had gone through the normal channels, they would have had to have permission from the county council to use that money.
Okay.
That's why they did the
And the
what they did.
explanation was from the president of the commissioners, Ron Stewart, explained that almost every county in Indiana has a lobbyist that they pay down at the State House. Fine. You should probably get the input of the citizens of what we should be lobbying for.
Well, you would think, yes. And that's,
Lobbyist. I'm really baffled by this whole situation because, one, usually the squeaky wheel gets greased. And I'm not saying you guys are a squeaky wheel, because you're not. You have a legitimate concern, because this does change the landscape of the farmland and how our kids are going to see farmlands, or if they're going to even be farmers. Mm-hmm. You even picking up the flag and running full steam ahead says a lot about you guys' character. What happens if this doesn't happen? What happens if, certain commissioners win their race and now we have solar? What happens then?
We're not done. I mean, even if they lose, we still have work to do. They still have until January until they're replaced anyways. So we're not stopping. I mean, there's very obvious blatant corruption in Grant County that we're here to help weed out. I mean, the more people know about it, there's no method of removing a county commissioner. There's no recall. There's short of an actual crime that puts them in jail. I think it takes a 2/3 vote. Well, when you got Mark Bardsley or Steve Wright or somebody, that's 2/3 right there. And Ron's not going to rock the vote.
Okay.
So I think, if the current commissioners lose, we've still got work to do to make sure this solar thing's locked tight. I think if the current commissioners win.
Because this is all over the state of Indiana.
Oh, yeah. But there are counties who are locked tight in
Yeah.
a moratorium.
Yeah.
I mean, a decision has to be made. And so if they win and they do not listen to the voices of their constituents, we still fight. I just told Kale the other day, even though the election's right around the corner, I'm going to continue to fight every angle we think of as a group. Hey, what about this? Well, let's navigate that. Let's go see how far. I'm not afraid to make a phone call. I just called J.G. Bowers today and requested to speak with Phil Bowers. I'm waiting on that phone call to come back. But, in the event the current commissioners lose and we get some new leadership in the county that will listen to the people like they've promised, my goal is to go for the lower levels. Last week we were here and we talked about how deep this runs. If Mark Bardsley and Steve Wright get beat out, my next target is Darren Reese. He's got to go. And so I'm going to figure out how to make that happen while still fighting the solar thing to make sure we're locked tight. But.
Okay. Well, I just ask him why Darren Reese.
Darren Reese is the head of the Republican Party in Grant County. it would take about another 30 minutes to explain the entire situation, but he questioned my status as a veteran and questioned my integrity publicly, and refused to withdraw a challenge to a candidacy that I signed up for a precinct committeeman, a smaller level government in the county, challenged it publicly. I called him privately the night before the meeting and explained to him the situation. He refused to withdraw that challenge, and then I gave him the same explanation publicly at the public hearing, asked him to withdraw, and he did not. And I don't take kindly to someone questioning my integrity when I've given them absolutely zero reason to do so.
Okay.
And so
Yeah.
that's just where I'm at.
And then after Dallas did his spiel, we had a number, I don't know, half dozen of our, our solar group members sign up for their own particular precinct to be committeemen also. And when they filed their application, we had a bunch of people meet at one location, fill them out together, and then we had one representative take it to the election
Office in the county.
election office. They had to be notarized, and the notary said, some of these are missing, which particular precinct they're signing up for, just because they didn't know which particular one, they were interested in participating, but they didn't know which particular precinct they fell under. So the clerk said, hey, you need to go back and fill these out after they'd already been notarized, right? So, honest mistake, right? Mm-hmm. So they took the applications back out, went in the other room, filled them out, handed them back in. Well, my understanding, Darren Reese was there when this was happening. So at that election board meeting where Dallas got rejected, the dude, Darren, challenged all of those applications under the guise of forging official documents and recommended to the prosecutor that they charge them for crimes of tampering with official documents. Which fortunately, the election board saw right through what was going on, because they had, I forget what particular attorney that they had representing our members.
Greg Kitts.
Greg Kitts, okay.
Okay.
He was there to say, hey, this, you were there, the notary was there, notarized it, and then noticed the mistake. It wasn't her fault, but she missed those parts. So
Right.
If you're gonna lay blame, maybe start at the top. But they're protecting their good old boy club because they had newcomers coming in.
So in a nutshell, you have a group of individuals that want to see a change in leadership in the county, and they all come forward as one and do the right thing like they're supposed to. And that little cog in their wheel catches wind of it, and their little safeguard comes forward with challenges. And you guys see where this is going. It's deep. We told you it was deep.
Yeah. It's interesting to say the least. I'm floored.
Imagine what we don't know, what we haven't figured out.
And that's what's scary. Because it could be worse, and it could be not that bad. But if it's not that bad, why wouldn't they share it? But if it's worse, is it going to affect, another term? Is it going to affect your lifetime? Is it going to affect your kid's
And the decisions of two men could grind that to a halt. Mm-hmm. Of two men that have nothing to do with farming. And he's not the only one. That's two guys in just our group that are farmers that want to grow and have family farms and continue that legacy of their name. Just in our group, the small group of guys we talk to, and then you've got the solar group that's a larger group as a whole. You're affecting family names and legacies. Two men get to make that decision. I say two because I think Ron Stewart's going to go, with whatever way the other two go, because they've teamed up. Bardsley's been a commissioner for over 20 years.
Has it been that long? I
Conveniently,
knew it'd been a while.
Steve Wright shows up, caucused in, and now we've got a 2-on-1. So they've kind of cornered Ron. Regardless of what he thinks, if I'm in a 2-on-1 position and votes count, we'll 2-to-1 everything if we have to.
Yeah.
So Ron's stuck in a tough position,
He's got one and one here and one the other.
So we're looking at two men that get to shape the futures of family names and legacies and their kids.
This country wouldn't be what it is without farmers. I mean,
Well, one of the landowners that is for solar is on record at multiple meetings stating that the sun is a crop and we can harvest it. Well, that sounds great, bud, until, you got cows or pigs that need to eat the beans or the corn that farmers grow.
Animals don't eat electrons.
Right. They can't eat the sun, bud.
that's right.
I've even heard of those panels getting so hot that it kills birds that fly overhead.
It would not surprise me. They get hot enough to catch on fire.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
like I said, they're black panels.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and since I was a kid, I was always told, man, when it's hot outside, don't wear a black shirt. You're gonna get hotter.
Yeah, I'm taken back because this is, I feel like it's so simple, but yet it's always got to be more complicated because of politics.
Right. So I can give you a very simple version.
Okay.
I've worked this out in my mind. Where we're currently at with House Bills 1120 and 1121. We need something done with the jail. I don't think anyone would argue that.
Right.
It's in bad shape. Something needs to happen.
I could have swore that they did some infrastructure stuff to it.
They did, and it was promised that it would last X amount of
Yeah,
years.
I think it was done in 2018, and we've got a bond on like a $7 million remaining bond for another 10 years that we can't pay, and we can't pay early. We have to ride that out till the end of the term, and the work that they've done is already falling apart.
And they won't come back and fix it.
Yeah.
So we can all agree something needs done with the jail, and it's going to cost money, right? So the commissioners came up with solar, with the help of solar, whatever. But now we've got 1120 and 1121 that's been signed by the governor in early March or mid-March, one of the two. So when I think about a jail as a citizen, I think everyone should be involved with that payment. Everyone should have something to do with it. Whether I go to jail or not,
Right.
whether you go to jail or not, we all as a community or a county should be responsible for that money. That's where the income tax comes in. Solar makes rural citizens pay for it and takes an out of sight, out of mind approach because the commissioners aren't going to see it when they're in Grant County. Mark Bardsley's not going to see it as the Marion City Police chaplain. I don't know what Steve Wright does professionally. I think he runs his own promo company, but he's not coming out to the country and looking around.
They both live in subdivisions that are protected with a HOA.
So
They are protected.
they've taken an out of sight, out of mind approach to affect as few people as possible, and it just so happens to be the rural citizens of the county.
And it seems like what they do and the way they are doing it, it seems like they are punishing us for some reason. Like just perception, it seems like they're getting back at the rural citizens for something.
Yep.
For
I don't know.
taking care of the nation.
Right, that's a really simple way to look at it, though.
Maybe
mean,
it's
this
because the vast majority of their votes come from city, maybe. Maybe they know the county people either don't vote or don't vote for them. Yeah.
But outside of money, give me another reason that solar's beneficial. And let me reel that back. Industrial solar. Personal solar, I'm good with. If you want to put solar panels on your house,
Yeah.
absolutely, go for it. Industrial solar, we're talking large scale. So
I think what bothers me most about it is it's the energy. If the panels are in Grant County, the energy should go to Grant County.
right. And it's so hit and miss. How often do we have sun? When you go to the winter months, what time does the sun come up and what time does it go down? Are we really talking about effective use of our land if you're looking at 6-7 hours of actual sunlight, and that's if it's not cloudy?
Yeah, the efficiency is not all there, and I don't have exact numbers for it, but, if we take a rough guess, maybe 250-ish, just ballpark number, 250 days of sun, and not full sun, just a few hours of full sun. In the winter, it's nothing but gray, so you're looking at maybe 10-15% efficiency in the winter. If this is as good as it is and what they are telling us, why isn't the desert west just filled with all of our, I understand the infrastructure and traveling 2,000 miles trying to push electricity and the parasitic loss and stuff from that, but if this is that big of a deal, why not put them in places that shine 360 days a year?
You would think.
Yeah.
Texas, Arizona, New Mexico.
I have friends who, they like to go on vacations and go and leave the country and stuff like that. I've only been to a handful of states in my 47 years of living. And when I think of vacation, like I want to go to like Missouri and see where Jesse James robbed a bank or something like that. Like, I would hate to say stuff like, oh, they should put it in South Dakota where there's only 910,000 people. Because South Dakota is a beautiful state.
Absolutely.
It's real hard. And you're right. Like Texas, New Mexico, Arizona.
Places where there's already federally protected land.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you want to protect it. Obviously, we want to take care of our environment. But stuff that's already land that's owned by the federal government, the ones that are pushing this, it only makes sense. Those, don't take farmland from individual property owners. But if you want to really dive down that conspiracy hole, you got to kind of think they're pushing this because they want, the ultimate end goal. I'm really going to dive down. The ultimate end goal of communism is to end all private ownership of property, all property.
Where they own it.
Yeah. It's owned by the collective or the government.
Yep. And that's,
And it sure seems like that's the way they're pushing this for the environmental cause, but, what's really going on? Like, I don't want to get too far into the weeds because we can make this a 10-hour podcast.
Yeah, because the wheels are turning in my head. I'm like, what's Soros funding here in Grant County?
So I had a conversation recently, and this is just another way to look at it. Just
Rent my roof.
Huh?
When I think about rent my roof,
I had a conversation with someone who's pretty high up in a company in the community that deals directly with farming. They're looking at making a pretty big investment in the county. I met Chuck Binkard, who's the new president of the Economic Growth Council. I wanted to feel him out, see where he was at with solar, because Charity Bailey and Tim Eckerly, we have the emails where they were actively pushing solar this entire time. They've also been a driving force. And so met Chuck and this representative from this company, and they were talking, and I kind of stepped back, and at one point the representative from this company said putting a solar panel in a farming field is just an easy way for a sleazy politician to make a quick buck. And when you really sit down and think about it, that kind of sums it up for me.
Because those commissioners are going to be the ones hiring the contractors.
Yep.
And we've already seen what they did to Chuck Polling,
Yeah.
all because he's trying to make a change in the county.
And what they did to me.
What a great segue, right?
Yeah, nice job, man. You should have a podcast or be on one.
You guys talk about the good old boys club. I'll tell you, I'm by far the oldest one here, and I can remember back in the '70s listening to my parents or my aunts and uncles talking about the Marion Mafia.
It's not the first time I've heard that term.
Certain people run the county.
Yeah.
But why?
I know. No,
Because they can.
right here, right here.
It's not that
Well,
Grant County's a shining diamond of
But it
money.
could be.
Well,
It absolutely
yeah.
could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be. But going into your, so I'm having a cup of coffee this morning, and I've gotten to the point where my political views, are my political views, but they've gotten wind of how to send spam texts and reach you in social media. And I'm almost like, or send $5 or something like that. Well, I get one today, and it just pops up on your notification, and I see two flashing red lights or whatever it is on each side. So I'm like, I wonder, sometimes it's important, sometimes it's nothing. And I pull it up, and I see a picture of you. And I'm like,
That's what I had.
I was like,
He got it too.
I was like,
I never got it.
I was
I
like,
didn't either.
you didn't?
No, we're scrubbed from that list.
Then I saw your post like an hour later.
Yeah.
So I looked at it and I was like, I know this dude. And I had to zoom in. I was like, holy shit. I texted Ted. I was like, did you get this? He was like, yep.
It's been a very exciting 24 hours, really.
Do you feel famous? I should print that out and have you sign it.
I was talking to somebody at work because I had a hectic day at work, and this is just the icing on the cake. But I was telling somebody at work, it's like, this has only happened to me for just a few hours. No wonder all these famous people go friggin' nuts with fame and attention and whatnot.
Well, I was thinking to myself, whoever took the picture, I've seen people on like TikTok where somebody commits a crime and they just follow them.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, if this guy stole a sign, why didn't they just follow you? Or, but
Where's the picture of him pulling out of the yard?
where's the video of him pulling
That's
it
what
out
I
of the
mean.
yard?
That's and where'd this picture
We
come
want to
from?
let's give a little context to the
Yeah.
listeners. So
Yeah.
I don't know if Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, if you're rolling through downtown Marion, right by the county building or the courthouse, you may see somebody standing outside with maybe a no solar sign, or recently Wednesday, see me standing out there with a large Steve Wright sign, and I printed out a large piece of paper to cover the for county commissioner part, and it says corrupt and ask me for the proof. So I was standing there. I get a lot of good reactions, like a lot of smiles, a lot of waves, quite a few honks. Like, you can tell people know who Steve Wright is, and they know why I'm there. Mm-hmm. It's not everybody, but there is it's a good enough turnout that makes me feel good about what I'm doing. Not that I care, but
Do you get fingers too, like telling you you're number one, or
The only
is
thing
it
I've-
mostly?
I've only had 2 bad interactions.
Okay.
The first time I stood out there with a no solar sign, it was one of the smaller ones, and had a poster on it that I printed out. All it said was Steve Wright is wrong for Grant County. And I had some guy stopped at the light at Adams and 18, and he rolled down his windows and yelling at me from catty corner on the street. He's like, "Ha ha, you're a real funny guy. You're a real joker." And then kind of stuck his hand and finger out at me when he drove by. I'm like, "That's awesome!" Like, I actually enjoy it because I smile and wave when they go by. Like, you're not affecting me.
You did a good job getting a rise out of it. So.
I mean, you could tell who the friends are of Steve Wright.
It was
So-
probably his nephew.
Yeah, probably. So Wednesday, I was standing at the corner, and I like I said, I get people come by and wave and smile when they turn the corner right there off of it's not Washington. Is it Washington? It's not Adams. It's the other one
Washington,
directly
yeah.
west Washington.
Washington, yeah.
Right there at Washington and 18, and some guy turning left in a big white car, stuck his hand out, said, hey, wave, smile. Okay, just like everybody else. A couple minutes later, he comes by with his phone sticking out of his window and, obviously filming me or taking a picture or something like that. And I couldn't hear exactly what he was saying the whole time, but it was very clear when he called me an asshole. And it just so happened that there was a Nathan Meeks magnet on the side of it. So I don't want to drag Nathan into this, but I ended up sending him a message because me and Nathan had been conversing back and forth because he was good enough to clarify his thoughts and stuff on the solar topic, posted to our group. He's in his personal capacity gave his own opinions of it, which is awesome, good for him. So I reached out to Nathan like, hey, I'm not offended. I don't care what the guy does, but if it was my campaign, I would like to know if the people who are representing me are doing so in a morally good manner, because that reflects directly on you.
Yes.
So, he reached out and he profusely apologized. And, I heard through the grapevine of what he told this guy, and I'm not going to call out any names, but this particular person was a known friend, longtime friend of Steve's. And I had heard, again, through the grapevine that Steve told this guy, yeah, this is it. We finally got Kale. Well, I'm going to get him for stealing my sign. So, I don't care. I know where the sign come from. I got it 100% legal. A friend got it from Steve. He signed up for it for the exact purpose of giving it to me so I could do my thing with it. So, I kind of had a thought in the back of my head, Steve's probably going to want to do something, but, what's he going to do? I know he's got no proof. He's got nothing on me. So I went after work into Gas City here, right in front of the City Hall. Stood out there for about, 45 minutes, 30 minutes, something like that. And had one guy one older gentleman stop talk to me. You could tell he was a friend of Steve, but it was a very cordial conversation. He asked why I thought the way I did, and I presented my evidence in a factual manner. Nothing I said was untruthful. Like everything I tell these people is because we have proof of it. I'm not going to say something stupid because I'm smarter than that.
Right.
But if I'm going to say something, it's because I have a way of backing it up. Guy didn't say anything and finally just walked off. No big deal. So I left for the day. I had to go home. And later in the day, I was away from the house, and the wife called me and said, hey, there's an Indiana State trooper here asking for you by name. When are you going to be home? I said, I'll be home soon. So I headed home and waited. The guy had to go, but he came back about 30 minutes later, and we had a short conversation, about an 8-minute conversation where, hey, I got a phone call. I'm here to investigate. I was told that you stole a campaign sign and, modified it. And, if you did take it, we're looking at, theft and criminal mischief based on the defacing of the property. And I said, I'm not going to tell you where I got the sign, but I will tell you I got it legal, 100% legal. And I know what I'm talking about. I know the law. So, I kept quiet when I wanted to keep quiet, but you could tell the dude had better things to do instead of being used for a political hit job. Is what
He had police work.
Trying to intimidate me.
Yeah.
Law enforcement
Yeah.
duties.
So, he chalked it up as a he said, she said, recommended that we work it out amongst ourselves. And I said, that's perfectly fine. Steve has my email address. My address is public information. He's welcome to stop by at any time. And I truly mean that, Steve. If you want to stop by for a conversation, you know where I live.
Just me. If somebody steals my sign and I get a picture and I know the guy and I have his email address, I'm going to be like, hey, bro, can I get my sign back, please?
If it were me,
With sugar on top?
if it were me and I had, if I had a grudge against somebody and I had proof of them stealing something, I wouldn't confront them. I'd go straight to my lawyer and say, we're going to surprise him because I want the reaction out of it or whatever. So I'm going to do this without giving any sort of heads up. That's the way I would do it.
Right.
But instead of doing that, Steve decided to make a cheap political statement by sending out a mass text to everybody accusing me of stealing with no proof whatsoever.
But he supposedly knew it was you, though, right?
Oh, it was a picture of me with his sign.
He knew who it was. He thought
But
he stole the sign.
Oh, okay.
He thought that.
He assumed that since I had the sign, that I had stolen it.
Because it made it sound like, anybody know this guy?
Yeah. If you see this guy, contact police immediately. Like I'm some hardened criminal.
Now call Mark Bardsley or Steve Wright and ask them, are you aware of this text message that went out? And they'll tell you.
No, it was my campaign.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it.
Who's funding the campaign?
A Mr. Phil Bowers, perhaps.
Of J.G. Bowers.
Mind you, they are also not following campaign finance laws by not putting the disclaimer at the bottom of these text messages like they're supposed to. Ooh. And our own election board won't take this up because they are, like, we have the laws. We presented the laws, the exact Indiana code to the election board saying, these guys are breaking the law. It's $5,000 per violation.
Per violation.
And a misdemeanor.
Ooh. Yeah, because you got to put this ad's paid for by and
that
approved
is
by
law, and they are breaking the law by doing this. Three of them now by Steve Wright has not followed campaign finance law.
Yeah, how'd they get my number?
It's based on your voter registration.
Yeah, so
Provided
when you walk up there and if you say, I vote Republican, like straight ticket, they'll give you a little Republican thing.
And they have a record. They know exactly what you voted for at any time because they pulled it up when they did Dallas's thing. They want to make sure if you're voting for a Republican that you didn't, in the last election, didn't try to vote for Democrat and you're trying to spoil the vote. I understand the process, but it can be weaponized, of course. And speaking of weaponization, that's what this text message was today, a very obvious intimidation tactic, trying to silence me. And you're not going to silence me. It just strengthens my resolve to keep doing what I am doing.
Right. But
Like if you're giving me this kind of attention for something this meaningless, man, I'm going to lean into it. Don't put fuel on my fire.
If you Google Steve Wright for commissioner and you go to his webpage, the first thing you see is how to sign up for a yard sign. So I don't know why in the world someone would think this gentleman, my constituent, stole my yard sign when the first thing on my campaign website is sign up for a yard sign.
Yeah,
Now, I'm not going to say any more than that, but if I really wanted a yard sign, there are ways to go about it.
Yeah, who's to say I didn't say, I'm John Doe, here's my address. He could have just as easily put it in my front yard and he's none the wiser.
And
Or somebody that works for him.
Right. I love Steve. I love what he did under Seabold. I want one of his signs for commissioner. And he's going to eat that up and say, go put a sign in there. You give him a big one.
Yeah, that's what I told the state trooper. Like, even if every single sign in the county disappeared, unless you've got proof, you got nothing on me. I mean, there's law. It's reasonable, articulable suspicion of a crime being committed, and if you don't have that, you don't have any basis. You got nothing.
my question is, why was the state policeman that came to your house? Why wasn't it a Grant County sheriff? Was there
He mentioned
phone call
that
made?
There was a phone call made to both the city police department and the county, and they didn't want anything to do with it because of obvious conflict of interest.
Right. Okay.
So good on our local PD because they could have just as easily taken that call and oh, don't worry, Steve, we got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
But the fact that Steve Wright would abuse his position in that format should serve as a warning or a heads up to any local law enforcement that are listening to this. Is make yourself question, what is Steve willing to do to protect where he's at?
And I do want to state, he did make the phone calls. He did try to get the local cops to do it first for him.
Okay. Wow. This is,
So, like I said, it's been a very exciting 24 hours.
there's a quote that I like to live by. It says, check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Did Ice Cube say that?
I never listened, Conrad, you know I didn't listen to rap. Come on.
Well, if you want to get philosophical, Voltaire said corruption, or power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
True.
Wow, man, you just went way over.
Yeah, I got an Eastbrook education.
Oh.
Sorry, I understand.
Ouch. Yeah, so now that being said, are you concerned that anything else is going to come of this?
I have to presume, desperate people do desperate things. You back an animal into a corner and they do unpredictable things. I don't know what Steve's capable of. I would like to think that Steve is a reasonable human being that knows when his time has come. I would think as a very religious man, he would conduct himself in a manner that portrays himself, that equals what he practices. And I'm not making a statement on his religious beliefs by any means, but I'm just saying him as a person, I'd hope he'd, take the high road, say, yeah, what I'm doing, Kale, is questionable, aggressive at times, but I've got every right, First Amendment right to redress my grievances. And, rights are like muscles. If you don't exercise your muscles, you lose them. So
There's nothing.
You talked about religion, Kale. I think we need to reemphasize Mark Bardsley, is the chaplain for the Marion City Police Department. A chaplain. So to not only condone this type of behavior on behalf of Steve Wright, but to participate with the things he did with Chuck Poling, there's something to be said about that. If you are an acting chaplain and an acting chaplain of a police force, to go even further, you're going to conduct yourself that way and then allow your coworker to act that way. I just think there's something to be said there about character.
Well, yeah, and that's,
yeah, if you're not telling your counterpart, hey, stop doing what you're doing, you're making us all look bad, then you're just as complicit as they are.
yes, yeah, definitely. Yep.
You've done that for me, Ted. There's been a couple times where I've wanted to be a real asshole and ask some really asshole questions, and Ted was like, no, there's another way. There's another way to do this. This is so crazy to me. Like, I feel like this could be a movie that, I don't know. I think about how important it is for not just everyone that votes regularly, but the people who are freshly 18 and can vote, to figure out, don't just go in there and waste your vote. Don't go in there and take time.
Right.
Find out, get some information.
It is your duty as an American citizen to educate yourself on who you're voting for, because the ability to vote does not exist everywhere in the world. This is a unique,
Right.
We are a unique country where we have the ability to choose our rulers.
It's a stinking privilege, man. I
Yeah.
mean, really, when you sit down and look
We've had
globally.
millions of our citizens died for our rights to do this.
Uh-huh.
And I know that on the federal level, it's a little bit different, but your state and local level is extremely important.
Absolutely.
And if you can't turn out to vote, somebody should be there to help you figure out, well, whether you can do it by mail, or some other way. But our younger generation, take time. Educate yourselves on each candidate. Don't vote for your buddy. Vote for your best interest. The people that are going to do right by everyone, not by a certain person or a certain party. I just really think that this election for our local is really huge. It's big.
I think Sunday we said it could change the landscape of the county, and I wholeheartedly believe that.
Yeah.
And that's more than solar. I think.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about it on the first episode.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many people do this, but I said on the first episode, I enjoy taking a country ride and seeing corn and blue skies. And, you know, it might be hot as Hades, but the window's down and Bob Seger's blaring and you're just loving the state of Indiana, your county. It's a God-given sight. You don't want to drive by and see 50-foot fans blowing everywhere.
Right. Our solar panels 12 feet off the ground with a few bushes around
Is
the
it
fence.
12 feet off the ground?
No, they could be 20 feet.
Yeah, they range. They range.
Dang.
But again, the ordinance is supposed to cover that, right? So in the ordinance, you're supposed to give a height limit. Well, if you're a solar company, you're gonna want the maximum so you can build as high as you want. If you're a citizen, you want them as low to the ground.
Right.
Okay.
Our commissioners go with the solar companies. And I don't know what the ordinance says specifically, but I could almost bet money that it is very solar friendly. Because that's the entire ordinance, is solar friendly.
And they want those ordinances solar friendly.
Absolutely. But with House Bills 1120 and 1121 that our tax money paid for our lobbyists to put us on, we don't need those solar panels. We can continue to farm and everybody shares their own share of responsibility of taking care of the jail.
See, I like that. Everybody shares.
I mean, farming feeds the nation. It feeds the livestock that
Feeds the nation.
feeds the nation.
Skin in the game is something we as a society have lost importance over. This is a controversial, maybe I don't want to talk about this, but people with skin in the game have something to lose. People with no skin in the game, they don't have to care.
Right.
So, you know, people with things to lose, houses, beautiful countryside views. These, you know, you need to protect what you have because, like the saying goes, and it's not just a random statement. You don't know what you have until it's gone. And when your view is gone, when your property is gone, you know, it's going to be 30 or 40 years till you have the possibility of getting that view back. And by, you know, when you're 40 years older, you know, are you gonna want to stick around for those 40 years? You'll probably end up moving because what you grew up, you saved your entire life for that property.
Tomorrow's not even promised.
Yes.
So for someone to say, I'm waiting 40 years to get that view back, you might not get it past year one.
Technology doubles every 18 months. I think that's
18 months.
Moore's law. It doubles in power and production every 18 months on average. So in 40 years, you know, I would have to assume that solar panels aren't going to be even remotely feasible.
No.
But in 40 years, some other technology is going to come up. So like, why waste what we have now because something more powerful, more efficient, more, you know, cheaper is going to come around. We don't need to waste what we have now because something else is going to happen.
And that being
Necessity
said,
is the mother of all invention.
you don't want to have to put on a VR headset just to get that view back. Because now your reality is so bad that you got to go to virtual reality.
Yeah.
And it's not just something you can reset. They're scraping inches of topsoil off of these fields just
Yeah.
to set their panels.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not something they pack these panels on a truck and drive off, because you're not going to get that topsoil back. They scrape it all the way off.
It
Yep,
takes
that's-
thousands of years to build organic topsoil.
Yep.
Really?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's an organic process.
There
And
can
in
be-
one fall swoop, they come in and scrape it all off
Yep.
just
And it's
to throw
gone.
their panels in the ground.
then
Clay base is a lot easier to work with, because when you have a great organic matter, you got the microorganisms, the bacteria and stuff in the topsoil. That's the productive stuff of where, the crops and plants like to live. But it doesn't have a physical structure like clay does. And clay holds structure, clay holds concrete.
Okay.
It doesn't move as much as topsoil does, because it's not as susceptible to freezing and thawing
Okay.
like topsoil, like clay, topsoils.
Is that why the freeze lines?
That's just the
No, they always
insulation
have-
value of the topsoil and whatnot. But like I said, clay, like Play-Doh kind of set up over time, right? And you can, it's not going to move as much. Topsoil is malleable. You can pinch it between
can
your
always,
hands.
yeah. But that's,
It's like what's in your garden.
Yeah, I don't have a green thumb, man. That's why I'm not a farmer. I'm a podcaster.
but that's just like, a lot of these people want to go organic now. This farm ground, it's going to have chemicals on it. If they were to tear them things out, how many years is it going to take before that's considered organic?
I don't think it's been around long enough to be able to tell you.
Because I know
Solar energy, I mean.
they have to allow at least 5 years of no chemicals on a certain property before they can consider it organic.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah,
Plus, you take core samples of your soil for soil testing and whatnot. And you go to like 6 to 12 inches if you really want to get a good overall sample. So while the topsoil may be organic because nothing's been on it,
What's under it?
Certain chemicals bind. There are chemical physical reactions with the soil and the structure of the soil. So whatever chemicals are being leached, if they are leached, they could sit in that profile for hundreds of years, probably.
Years,
like,
yeah, and that's
It just because there's nothing on the top, like a corn plant,
Yeah.
like for popcorn, they say corn will grow as deep as it is tall. And a typical corn plant can put up 3 miles worth of roots.
yeah, yeah.
So it's going to find whatever chemicals are in the
Somewhat,
ground.
yeah. So how can you consider it organic? You can't. And that's something else I thought about. Because we talk about we put solar panels up. The view we're going to lose. You drive around Grant County, I don't care what north, south, east, or west. There are some beautiful farms.
Absolutely.
You might have 4 or 5 grain bins sitting here they're the 60-footers, but the property, the houses, the barns are just immaculate. We can't lose that stuff.
I was just looking up what solar cells are made of. Silicon. They create negative and positive semiconductors. I should have paid more attention in science class, man.
Yeah, it's probably a bunch of words none of us say.
But what happens when they don't last forever? There's going to have to be a certain level of upkeep. So what happens when they do break down, they fall into the soil? These guys aren't going to come and make sure every single molecule of that solar cell is picked up off the ground.
I think it was Wednesday, The Guardian had an article that was based out of India, and they chronicled the day in the life of a guy who actually makes his living off of recycling solar panels. And, India's not exactly a hotbed of safe work environments, but they were talking about the separation of the glass and the steel and the aluminum and the, you know, anodes and cathodes and stuff inside of it, that, you know, the glass itself doesn't have a value because it can't be melted down, like economically
Right.
separate it from the steel, separate it from the aluminum. And I don't remember the exact details, but it was by far not even close to being economically feasible to recycle for people who live off of $1 a day.
Oh, yeah, in that country, and that's,
And for you know, say what you will about the state of capitalism in the United States, we're in it for king dollar, and if there's not $1 to be found in recycling, it's not going to be done.
no. So it's just gonna sit there.
Just like the fiberglass windmill fans, they bury them. There's no feasible way of recycling fiberglass at that capacity, so they just bury them. And I know California is running out of space for things in their landfills because of the complexity and the size of these things.
Oh, there's heavy metals and cadmium, arsenic, and silver in solar panels. These are extremely harmful to the environment and health, human health.
Now throw a softball size hail ball from the sky into one of those panels that's only covered by glass, and ask yourself where all those chemicals
Yeah.
are going to go.
And
In the
that
weeks.
goes back to what I said earlier about the multiple months that it would take for a contractor to be able to clean it up
Yeah.
and repair it.
Yeah.
So in that meantime, you know, it rains 2 or 3 times a week. You know, it's just going to keep leaching into your water supply and your water table. And those of you with wells are going to be susceptible to that. It's, you know, a little bit on a higher scale than people in the city who get regular treatment.
That issue could also be addressed in the ordinance if it were truly citizen friendly. But a solar company doesn't want that in the ordinance, so you can only imagine what our county's ordinance has in it.
Okay.
Well, that goes back to our question of like, who's gonna do the preventive maintenance on this stuff? You know, as an engineer, stuff it has to have preventive maintenance.
Yeah. You don't.
Yeah, it wears down over time.
Okay, so
Yep.
hey, you coming once a month or?
Well,
When we call you?
I mean, the current commissioners are supposed to be the experts on this topic since they're the only ones allowed to talk to solar, and their silence over the radio on that as well.
They
We've
either
heard
can't
nothing.
tell us or won't tell us.
It all reverts back to, we need a new jail. We
You
need
know,
money for that.
you've got a guy in the city who comes and says, okay, your privacy fence can't be over 9 feet tall from the ground up.
That's
Is
Ryan
it-
a lot.
Is there somebody who comes and says, hey, guys, you said that we weren't going to use lead in these solar panels?
See, draft 7 of the ordinance that was properly named the People's Ordinance that was passed by the APC had those exact same protections in it. It actually had means of protecting citizens from, you know, setbacks, from making sure these solar panels are not sourced from China, that they're, you know, ethically sourced. Who's going to take care of it? Who's going to decommission it? Who's going to repair it? That kind of stuff.
So the panels aren't even American made?
Whatever's.
It's
yeah.
highest bidder contract.
Whatever the
Yeah,
cheapest.
It's highest bidder contracts, man. So whatever company comes in with the highest amount of dollars for that contract will buy it.
They're gonna.
And
And
they're
just
going to
to put-
pay the cheapest they can for a solar panel, and no one cares where it comes from because they're making more money.
Just to put this in perspective to people, Ted, you remember this. I kind of remember it, but remember when we were kids and you would be sitting in the back seat of your parents' car without a seat belt, probably on the floorboard, and the gas station attendant would say, leaded or unleaded. Well, no one knows now. You can't get leaded gas
Right.
because of the effects of what leaded gas did to you.
I think the people who were affected by leaded gasoline are the people who are running our government.
I thought you were going to say who have podcasts.
Well, to some certain extent, I don't.
Let's go back to your question about who's going to hold these companies accountable. So I had Steve ride out to my house. This was February, one of the nicer days in February. And I drove him around the northern part of the county, Van Buren area, to show him the properties and non-participating landowners that would be directly affected. And I had a map, and we drove around. He stopped. He drove. He refused to ride with me. He had to drive. Okay, Steve, fine. So I get in, and I'm telling him where to go. And he pulls over to a house that was pretty run down. Grass was tall, just a beat-up house, right? And he made a comment about that house and how a solar project could help that house out and how it decreased the land value of the neighboring properties. So talking about solar projects decreasing land value was kind of null and void because you had houses like that. And it got my mind working. So as he pulled in, we sat in my driveway. I said, Steve, I'm going to ask you a question. The house you just showed me, there's a trailer right down the road that's in similar shape. I said, we don't have enough people employed by the county to come all the way out here and enforce some standards to those homeowners or those property owners. Because technically they could enforce, certain Indiana codes or county codes, and if they don't apply or comply, that homeowner, that property could lose their home. I said, you're going to bring in solar projects. Who's going to hold them accountable? And he said, Dallas, it all comes back to money, and those projects are going to give us the money to hire enough people for accountability. Okay, Steve. Okay, so you're going to get a new jail and new employees from solar projects.
That's, see, I'd like to know the numbers on that. How many jobs is this solar going to bring in?
We have an email from Ryan Malott that says, Steve doesn't know how much. He's thrown out a number of $500 million, but he truly doesn't know. And Ryan says we need to hammer down how much money we're going to make as a county.
That $500 million figure is the infrastructure cost that it's going to for the entire project. That's not revenue. That's just the assets and the value of
So once it's
labor
built,
being brought in.
Right.
what's it bringing
Value
in a
coming
year?
into the county is going to be a very small fraction
Yeah,
of that.
yeah.
But your story there reminds me of another story. Probably January, February, we had one particular member of the public had called Steve out actually a couple times to his property because he was going to be surrounded by 3 sides. And, him and Steve sat on the back porch, said, Steve, I've worked my entire life for this house and this view. You're going to surround me in 3 sides. What can you do to protect me? And, Steve said this multiple times because it was a pat myself on the back kind of comment, right? It was, well, let's call out the solar companies and see what we can do for you. So Steve worked very hard in getting the solar company to come out and say, yeah, we can probably, move the setbacks a little further. And eventually got to the point where, this project's not going to happen anyway, so you're okay. But Steve liked to tell us that, he worked for this. This was when he was still on the APC. So this would have been back in December-ish.
Yep.
But, Steve liked to tell us that he went out of his way to help this one particular citizen with his genuine concerns about being surrounded on 3 sides. Awesome. Love to, if that was true, that's the way a politician should be. That's the way he should be protecting every citizen out there. Why him? Why not the rest of us? He won't come and talk to anybody else, but this particular guy, I think this is my chance to be a knight in shining armor. I'm gonna make this guy, my everything right now. I'm gonna take care of this guy because it makes me look good. But where's our protections?
Yeah, everybody else. That's what I say.
Is he special just because he's surrounded on 3 sides versus 2 sides?
Right. And that's, like I said, how many jobs is this going to provide to the county?
I did see that figure. There was a projection. It was retaining jobs after the fact, after everything's been completed and signed off. It was in the low double digits. like tens of
Well,
people.
Okay, then you look at that, okay, this person they're hiring has no clue about solar. You're going to have to send them somewhere. They're going to have to be trained, so you're paying to train this person on...
Either that or they're coming from out of state, like
Right.
GNEX headquarters in North Carolina.
So they're really not
right. They're not
Yeah.
citizen.
Grant County.
Right.
yeah, so they're not paying
I
no
mean, they
taxes
could
here,
become Grant County citizens, but they're not
But
Grant County
speaking
people.
to that training thing, I think we made mention of it last time, but the fact that the solar installation in Gas City had a fire, and our own fire department had to let it burn because they didn't have the training, they didn't have the equipment to put it out. I mean, I'm not saying it burns at quite the intensity of a lithium fire, but
Right.
we've seen the videos and stuff of like electric cars catching on fire,
Mm-hmm.
and how many it's an exponential scale of the amount of water that it takes to
to douse that fire. Yeah.
to put it out versus a regular, regular fuel fire.
Yeah, or
And these panels, anybody can be trained. We can train guys.
Right.
But the amount of equipment that it's going to take is going to be another significant burden to the taxpayers.
more cost.
And how much per firefighter are we
Yeah.
looking at? we talking $25,000 in training per firefighter?
yeah.
How much
many-
is the life worth?
Right.
And how many new fire people do we need?
Yeah. That's been training this,
Do
yeah.
you need a specialized truck with the chemicals and equipment necessary?
And a ground rig able to go in between the panels.
Oh.
The dollar signs start to add up.
It's not just the cost of the installation; it's all the ancillary stuff that you don't think of until you really need it, and then it's too late.
Wow. We stepped on something else there.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that.
Like I said, man, we could do 2 or 3 or 4 of these things.
Man.
It goes deep. But again, with House Bills 1120 and 1121 that our commissioners fought for us to be in, we don't need any of it.
I don't want to say tax me, but tax me. Get rid of the solar.
That's kind of the position I'm
Yeah.
in. If it
Let
saves
everybody
my
have skin in the
sons,
game. Everybody pays the same amount. It's fair for every citizen in the county.
Yep.
And it comes back to my comment. Don't punish the people in the county, out in the country. Mm-hmm. Let everybody take the burden of.
Well,
of
it
this.
sounds like it doesn't. They're still going to tax you and put solar.
oh
there.
yeah, with
That's
or
it.
without solar, your taxes are going up.
Yep.
Well, but then you got to figure out on taxes because you said, they're, 60,000 they're saying in the county?
66,000
66-ish.
people.
Okay. And how many of them work and pay taxes?
Right.
Half maybe
If that, I wouldn't even say half.
between children and retired
Yeah.
people and people work out of. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know the price of groceries right now?
Price of anything.
Shoot, man.
So now we're going to have to pay for a jail and.
Yeah, your property taxes are due on May 10th. Have you paid those yet? Because they are significantly higher.
Yeah, they are. Oh, man. Oh, man.
This is pretty deep.
Indiana's. I don't know which state it is, but maybe it's California, or New York, but maybe Indiana is going to be the new tax me state. Get that new nickname.
Time to move to Texas, I guess. Like all them people in California are doing.
Well, I know that, like, Tennessee doesn't have a state sales tax. Or,
Go to New Hampshire where they don't have an
Yeah.
income tax.
But in Indiana, they tax you for the tires, and then tax you for the road you're about to drive on, and then tax your gas.
And then won't reimburse you when the potholes destroy your car.
Exactly. But we're not accountable for the holes in the road.
And years ago, there were no taxes. Can you believe that? People didn't have to pay taxes.
Right up until 1913,
Anything.
we were a proper country.
No, that's what I'm telling you. Man.
thank you guys so much for coming back on.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
This has been awesome. And
Hopefully, let's bring you guys back. Hopefully, after May 7th,
Let's
it'll
do
be a
it.
Yeah, let's see.
It'll be a way different
Yeah,
conversation.
we could have a debriefing of what we learned and what we accomplished and what we can still work on.
yeah,
Speaking of May 7th, this election is important.
Yeah.
It matters. Let your voice be heard. if you have an opinion, by all means, go to the election booth and let your voice be heard, because local politics, it involves you whether you like it or not.
Yep.
Yeah, you watching right there. Get
Absolutely.
out there and vote. And if I may say so, the only people who can stop this right now are Chuck Polling and Shane Middlesworth. And I'll throw in an honorable mention to Ed Hartman and Greg Kitts, who are running for county council, who will keep the taxing and money spending in check also.
And like you said, these local elections, they're more important than the general election.
It's undeniable how crucial the right choice for your elected official is right now.
They like to say at every election that this is the most important election ever. And that's just election talk. But in our situation, it really is the truth.
Yeah, Grant County for
Yeah,
sure.
the citizens in the community need to be educated. It is kind of your responsibility to educate yourself.
Yes.
Get out there and speak with your your candidate, your possible elected official. Elected officials should never, and I'm not saying that they are, or any of ours are, but elected officials should not be lining the pockets of themselves
Or the contractors that they employ.
at the behest
yeah.
of their citizens.
J.G. Bowers.
But doing the right thing for the majority of people, because nobody's ever gonna, you're not gonna get everybody to agree, but on down the road, they could be like, hey, you know what? I'm so glad I was wrong,
Absolutely.
And do the right
or
thing.
I'm so glad I was right.
Do the right thing even when nobody's watching.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's.
I vote that in.
That's the
I'll make a
definition of
motion
integrity.
that pass.
That will be the voting for Steve or Marg or Shane or Chuck. Which ones are the ones that do right when nobody's watching, or who's doing what they consider right as long as it makes them look good.
Thank you so much for taking time and telling us your story.
Absolutely, gentlemen. It was a pleasure.
We're going to bring you
appreciate
guys
you
back for
Yeah.
sure.
Yep, because we want an ending. We would like a great ending to this story. We'll see.
With the kind of work we're doing and the amount of effort we're putting in, we're gonna deliver you a fairy tale ending.
Thank you guys.
You guys are on the right track.